Nyalche Chembo Toto Ningmi Chang, Donen Manam Chembo, Nyaketa, Lakara Dargam Santo, Shermat, Tumba Tuche Chan Laki Shom Sar, Nishan Roar Zer Nishan Kamsa, Jawar Tuji Shan Yelaman, Jime Panzo Jala, Soran, Gonjo Toban Pora Shinjilo, Gonjo Toban Pora Shinjilo, Gonjo Toban Pora Shinjilo.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching.
When we pray to the Guru, everyone should at least have a sense of reverence. Silently pray to the Guru and the Buddha. Then, when I remind everyone to generate bodhicitta for all sentient beings, please try, at the beginning of this teaching session, to reflect for a moment. Today, for the benefit of all sentient beings, I will listen to this teaching. Please think in this way. Later, when we dedicate the merit, think. The merit from what I have heard today, from studying this sutra or treatise, I will dedicate to all sentient beings in the three realms. Actually, if you make this kind of thinking a habit, it is not difficult. However, we ordinary beings, without frequent reminders, often forget. Actually, once this truly becomes a habit, for those who practice well, when it comes to important matters, they can naturally do it on their own. Those of middling capacity can do it after being reminded. Those of lesser capacity, whether reminded or not, remain indifferent. On the surface they may listen, but perhaps they are not really listening. Now let us continue with the Shurangama Sutra. As I explained yesterday, the Buddha told Ananda, if you wish to transcend the paths of Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas and generate the mind of unsurpassed Bodhi, you must first never grow weary of the Tathagata's Samadhi. Then, when generating bodhicitta, you must possess two kinds of definitive understanding. The first definitive understanding is actually about how the aspiration at the causal stage must correspond with the awakened nature at the fruition stage. This is the main meaning of the first definitive understanding. In explaining this, first we discussed how cause and fruition correspond. This point was covered. Then, in this process, why is it that we currently lack this correspondence? It is because sentient beings do not truly understand the original face of Tathagata Garbha, and therefore the five turbidities arise. The five turbidities of what we call the age of the five turbidities share the same names as those mentioned here. These include the turbidity of the kalpa, the turbidity of lifespan, the turbidity of views, the turbidity of sentient beings, and the turbidity of afflictions. The names of these five turbidities are the same, but in terms of their actual meaning, there are some slight differences in certain aspects. So when explaining the five turbidities, we first discuss how to understand them. Then through analogies, we explain the meaning of turbidity. This is what I covered yesterday. Today we will continue by explaining each of the five turbidities separately. What are the five turbidities? Let us examine this teaching. Among the five turbidities, first we discuss the turbidity of the kalpa. The Buddha told Ananda, you see space pervading the 10 directions. Space and seeing are undivided. There is space without substance. There is seeing without awareness. They interweave to form delusion. This is the first layer called the turbidity of the kalpa. Here the Buddha first explains the turbidity of the kalpa. If we speak of the turbidity of the kalpa in the ordinary sense, in the degenerate age, there arise weapons, warfare, and various calamities. At that time, the collective merit of sentient beings diminishes and various disasters arise. This is the turbidity of the kalpa. However, the turbidity of the kalpa mentioned here is actually somewhat different. How is it different? The Buddha told Ananda, you see space, you perceive that space pervades the 10 directions. As we all know, the seeing nature is often compared to space. Seeing refers to the seeing nature, understood from the perspective of the cognizing wisdom. Its object of perception is described as space. In this way, if you look at space, space certainly pervades the 10 directions. By the same principle, your seeing nature pervades the 10 directions. But in the very beginning, it was not like this. What we are discussing here is something like this. According to many commentaries, at the very beginning, when the first moment of ignorance arose, that is actually when the turbidity of the kalpa appeared. Before the first moment of ignorance arose, this seeing pervaded everything, just like space. This is similar to what we discuss in Vajrayana, when the ground and the ground appearances have not yet separated. The primordial ground is like space, not falling into any direction or extreme. This way of explaining it is almost identical. Here it says, your seeing of space pervades the 10 directions. Then space and seeing are undivided. Space, because it does not fall into any particular location, is also undivided, and seeing is also undivided. Why are space and seeing undivided? Actually, space has not been defiled by the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and wind. Therefore it is still undivided. Seeing has also not been defiled by the 6 sense faculties. Thus, seeing is also undivided. There is space without substance, there is seeing without awareness. That is to say, in the very beginning, what is called space has no substance, no essence of the 4 elements, and seeing, that is our original seeing, has no awareness, meaning it has not been defiled by the 6 sense faculties. After this, in the very beginning, our true essence, the original wondrous awakened nature of Tathagata Garbha, was not separated, but later, over time, something arose. It arose without any cause, what we call innate ignorance, and conceptual ignorance appeared. After this, they interweave to form delusion. Finally, the object, space and mind nature, the primordial ground, the alaya consciousness on the level of appearances, interweave to form delusion, becoming false thought. Once false thought arose, the first moment of ignorance was produced. This first moment of ignorance is actually like water that, in the beginning, eventually mixes with dust. It immediately becomes turbid. In the beginning, water is pure. It has no connection with turbidity. But later, if someone throws dirt into the water, it becomes interwoven to form delusion. This is the first layer, called the turbidity of the kalpa. This is the first turbidity, and its name is the turbidity of the kalpa. If we correlate this, it corresponds to form aggregate among the 5 aggregates. Many commentaries explain that this corresponds to the form aggregate among the 5 aggregates. This means that when ignorance first arose, before ignorance arose, there was no physical body. There was no so-called feeling, no perception, nothing at all. But after the first moment of ignorance arose, through the 12 links of dependent origination, the 5 aggregates of the body began to appear. Once the 5 aggregates appeared, name and form, that is the solid phenomena of external objects and internal mind, gradually formed. Thus arose the turbidity of the kalpa. The turbidity of the kalpa is also related to time. Among the 5 turbidities, this is the first, the turbidity of the kalpa. Why is it called kalpa? Generally speaking, in the beginning there was a perfect kalpa, a complete kalpa. Later it became a turbid kalpa. It changed like this. By the same principle, when sentient beings were at one with their essence, inseparable from Tathagata Garbha, everything was perfectly complete. Later, after ignorance arose, various external objects and cognizing subjects appeared. Compared to before, this period is relatively defiled and turbid. Therefore, this is called the turbidity of the kalpa. This is the first turbidity. Now the second turbidity. Your body now grasps the 4 elements as its substance. Seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing become blocked and obstructed. Water, fire, wind, and earth revolve around awareness. They interweave to form delusion. This is the second layer, called the turbidity of views. Next, the Buddha explains the turbidity of views. How does the turbidity of views arise? The Buddha told Ananda, your body, since the form aggregate has already appeared, now we can say the body has formed. Your body now grasps the 4 elements as its substance. That is to say, your body is actually a false combination of of the four elements, earth, water, fire, and wind. Through this false combination, what we call the physical body is formed. In this way, our body, after the false combination of the four elements, what appears? Seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, and knowing. All of seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing appear because of depending on the four elements. Seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing appear. Because of having the six sense faculties, seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing appear. After seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing appear, they become blocked and obstructed. Blocked means congested or obstructed. Being obstructed, there is hindrance. There is material obstruction. For example, once the eyes see, they cannot go beyond form. Originally, from the perspective of the true nature of Tathagata Garbha, there is no obstruction, no barrier. It can function universally, reaching everywhere. But because of having such obstructions, the eyes can only see forms and cannot hear sounds. The ear faculty can only hear sounds and cannot taste or perceive other objects, and so on. In this way, there is hindrance. Apart from one's own objects of perception, one cannot access anything else. Water, fire, wind, and earth revolve around awareness. Because the four elements of earth, water, fire, and wind have already entered into our awareness, they wrap around or entangle our awareness. They revolve around our awareness. This means that our original awareness is pure like space. It has no such seeing, hearing, feeling, or knowing. It has no such biased or partial concepts, no such false thoughts. But because the four elements combine with our awareness, joining together, for example, water, we feel it is moist. Fire, we feel is warm. Earth, we feel is solid. Wind, we feel is moving. These combine with our awareness. After this, they interweave to form delusion. It seems as if all these are real. Earth, water, fire, and wind, when combined with our body, give rise to various feelings, pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neutral feelings. These are actually called the turbidity of views. The turbidity of views corresponds to the feeling aggregate among the five aggregates. Why does it correspond to the feeling aggregate? As we all know, the feeling aggregate generally grasps at objects. By the same principle here too, when our mind nature falsely combines with the four elements of earth, water, fire, and wind joining together, there is actually obstruction and partiality. But if there were no such obstruction, in terms of the function of Tathagata Garbha, everything would be fully possible. In certain sutras and treatises, it is also explained that for the Buddha, his six sense faculties, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, are not limited. For example, the eye faculty not only sees forms, but can also hear sounds and can also taste or touch or perceive other objects, including the case of Venerable Purna. At that time his physical eyes had become blind, yet through divine eye he could see all forms, even better than those with eyes. If truly, apart from the eye faculty, there were no such ability, then others, even though they have Tathagata Garbha, even though they have consciousness, would not be able to perceive. Nowadays, many people, including some children, have what is like a kind of divine eye. Many objects that ordinary older people or adults cannot see, they can see, including some ghosts and spirits, and many people who now have special abilities, even if they are blind, through the sensation of their fingers they can recognize characters and can distinguish various tastes, among many other phenomena. So we should understand that if our four elements were not entangled and obstructed, if the impure four elements did not falsely combine with us, controlling our awareness, then awareness in terms of its own function would be fully capable of everything. Just like water, if it is naturally left alone, within it white, red, blue, and various reflections can appear. But because there is some kind of mixed, turbid substance, for this reason, various reflections cannot appear within it. The water's own function cannot fully manifest. The reason is that there are other external conditions. Sometimes I think this principle is really important. Sometimes we think, well, it seems like Tathagata Garbha is present in every sentient being, and the qualities of Tathagata Garbha can all manifest in the future. But why then do we still have have so many limitations. The reason for these limitations is explained very clearly here. Why is it that some people, through diligent and earnest practice, have truly attained the state of transcending the ordinary and entering the sacred? Why is this? Some people attain it, some do not. I think some people have an especially urgent aspiration for practice. When the aspiration is especially urgent, then through the power of their mind, many external obstacles are naturally removed. Some people, though on the surface they practice a little, perhaps due to various obstacles from past lives, or perhaps because the power of their practice is weak. There are various reasons. So after we study the Shurangama Sutra, we may indeed come to understand. Sometimes it seems our consciousness is impermanent, yet sometimes the essence of consciousness is luminous, an unconditioned phenomenon. But how exactly do we analyze these two? Sometimes it seems our body directly affects the mind, yet sometimes it seems they have no connection. There is such a particularly complex principle that often binds us. Actually, after we study this, the Buddha, through reasoning and logical proof, enables us to further understand the actual principle of realizing the mind and seeing the nature. He did not simply tell a story from the past to make us believe. It is not like that. He completely analyzes every layer of content, layer by layer. In the process of analysis, he gives each of us the right to participate in this profound field of debate. This is extremely meaningful. The methods of investigation and analysis in some other scriptures are indeed somewhat different. Each one of us can investigate the relationship between our body and mind, or the relationship between the four elements and our mind. Everyone can participate in this kind of investigation. In the process of investigation, sometimes we truly experience the clouds parting and the sun appearing. We can fully understand the principle within. Sometimes we are all confused and muddled, as if lost in clouds and fog, indeed a bit hard to understand. But I think this is also normal. Look at Venerable Ananda. He was such an extraordinary noble being, yet he also often wept. He also often felt wronged. For us ordinary beings who have been drifting in samsara since beginningless time, weighed down by heavy karma, it is even more normal that we do not understand, right? If even Ananda did not understand, then for us it is truly normal. Here we mainly discuss the feeling aggregate. Why can we not see the true mind now? Because our four elements, earth, water, fire, and wind, are interwoven with our mind nature. After being interwoven, they become false thoughts, false dust. This false dust is actually originally illusory, but we ordinary sentient beings take it to be real. When we discuss Madhyamaka, we call this conventional truth. What is conventional truth? Actually, it is false. But for ordinary beings obscured by ignorance, they regard it as truly real. So in their perception, when we study the Entering the Middle Way regarding ultimate truth and conventional truth, ultimate truth is established through reasoning before noble beings. It is entirely true. Why is it called conventional truth? Because for beings obscured by ignorance, it appears solidly established, but actually it is false and unreasonable. So the second turbidity is the turbidity of views. Regarding views, as everyone knows, among views, some are right views and some are wrong views. Some appear to be right views on the surface, but are actually wrong views. For example, we believe in permanence, pleasure, self, and purity. We think our body is clean. We think all phenomena are permanent. On the surface, some of this seems correct, temporarily unchanged. But actually, this is a kind of wrong view. Actually, views are a kind of definite cognizing subject, but this cognizing subject is also relative. Just like in Buddhist logic, inferential knowledge and direct perception, relatively speaking, they are valid cognition. But if measured by ultimate truth or examined from the perspective of noble beings, they are also invalid cognition. So why is this called the turbidity of views? Ordinary sentient beings regard it as real. Seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing are all considered real. But actually, this kind of seeing is also turbid seeing, the turbidity of views. It is not the most thorough, not the most ultimate. This is the second. The third is the turbidity of afflictions. Furthermore, in your mind, Remembering, cognizing, reciting, and learning, the nature gives rise to knowing and seeing, accommodating the six sense objects. Apart from the objects, there is no appearance. Apart from awareness, there is no nature. They interweave to form delusion. This is the third layer called the turbidity of afflictions. Next, the Buddha says to Ananda, actually, the Buddha truly displayed something like miraculous powers. In the short 49 years after attaining Buddhahood, he taught so much Dharma, just our Shurangama Sutra alone. Some people have only one book in their entire life, only one representative work. But the Buddha, look at how much he taught. With so much time, sometimes when we look, actually, the sutras now existing in the human realm are actually very few. There are many more in the celestial realms and dragon palaces. So the Buddha here, looking at the Shurangama Sutra, it seems as though the Buddha had much free time conversing with Ananda for such a long time. It is always like this. But actually, certainly, whichever sutra of the Buddha we study, when we study it in this way, it is also very meaningful. For us too, I think everyone should feel very fortunate. Especially in recent years, we have studied many relatively extensive sutras, such as the Vimalakirti Sutra, the Lotus Sutra. These are also very famous in Chinese Han Buddhism, including the Diamond Sutra and the Medicine Buddha Sutra. The Diamond Sutra and Medicine Buddha Sutra are not that extensive. Also the verse summary of Prajnaparamita. All these sutras spoken directly by the Buddha. We have studied some of them. Here too, we can say in modern language, he explains to Ananda earnestly and patiently, layer by layer. Just now we finished explaining the turbidity of views. Next, furthermore, in your mind, remembering, cognizing, reciting, and learning. In your mind, the various discursive thoughts of past, present, and future. Remembering refers to discursive thoughts grasping at the past. Cognizing refers to the present cognition grasping the present perception. Then reciting and learning. Reciting refers to discourse, and learning refers to study, familiarization with the future. Some commentaries explain these terms as relating to the past, present, and future. All these six consciousnesses, your sixth consciousness, the discriminating consciousness, the nature gives rise to knowing and seeing. All these consciousnesses of future, present, and past, within your perspective of knowing and seeing, within your function or within your capacity, give rise to knowing and seeing. Actually, they accommodate and manifest the six sense objects, whether past, present, or future, the images of your discursive thoughts and views. Manifesting as knowing and seeing accommodate and become the six sense objects, that is, the six objects, form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mental objects. This means that here the Buddha mainly discusses the perception aggregate. The perception aggregate grasps various characteristics, takes various aspects. In this way, past, present, and future, all kinds of judgments, analyses, and discriminations, these are all a kind of knowing and seeing. What do these forms of knowing and seeing produce? They produce the external six objects, or six sense objects. If these discursive thoughts of the six consciousnesses were apart from the six objects, apart from the objects there is no appearance. Apart from the six objects, if there were no objects, no form, sound, smell, taste, or touch, then the appearance of the grasping subject mind would not exist. Apart from the objects there is no appearance. Conversely, apart from awareness, that is, the six collections of subject consciousnesses, the six consciousnesses of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. If the six consciousnesses were absent without an apprehending subject, an apprehended object would be impossible. So the objects also could not be established. No nature. No nature means the true essence also cannot be established. So when we truly examine actually whether it is your present discursive thoughts grasping at various characteristics, apart from objects, consciousness does not exist. Apart from consciousness, objects do not exist. This is how it is in terms of essence, but actually in actual reality it is not like this. although in essence neither objects nor consciousness exist. On the level of appearance, objects and mind are all interwoven together. They interweave to form delusion. Originally our afflictions, actually this is really the case, as everyone knows. For example, if I am to generate attachment, it is through depending on objects that the mind of attachment arises. Actually, without objects there is no grasping mind. Without the grasping mind there is no object to be grasped. Although they do not exist, in the very process of their not existing, they still become delusion. That is, false discursive thoughts naturally form. This is the third layer, called the turbidity of afflictions. It mainly corresponds to the perception aggregate. Some scriptures say, the entire ocean of karmic obscurations arises from false thoughts. The entire ocean of karmic obscurations is produced from false thoughts. This is also said. The meaning is that our afflictions, actually regarding afflictions, we will also analyze them in the second topic below. But here the Buddha tells Ananda, mainly the various objects and consciousnesses discriminated by your 6 consciousnesses on the surface all appear to exist. But actually they are all just illusory appearances. This is called the turbidity of afflictions. So ordinarily when we speak of the turbidity of views, it mostly refers to eternalism, nihilism, and wrong views. The turbidity of afflictions refers to when afflictions of attachment, aversion, and ignorance are coarse and intense, when afflictions are very powerful. But here it is not explained this way. Here, when discussing the turbidity of afflictions, it says that actually objects and mind, or the essence of discriminating future, present, and past, cannot possibly exist. Yet at the same time that they clearly do not exist, they interweave with our discursive thoughts, and finally these afflictions are formed. The turbidity of afflictions is like this. In Tibetan, these turbidities are slightly different from the Chinese word for turbidity. We generally call turbidity nyema. The turbidity in 5 turbidities of the degenerate age is nyema. Here the Tibetan translation uses nayupa. Nayupa also means turbidity, but the word is slightly different. This is the third turbidity, then the 4th. Furthermore, from morning to evening, arising and ceasing without stop, knowing and seeing always wish to remain in the world, yet karmic forces constantly transfer you to other lands. They interweave to form delusion. This is the 4th layer, called the turbidity of sentient beings. Next is the 4th, the turbidity of sentient beings. It corresponds to the formation aggregate among the 5 aggregates. The meaning is that whether from morning to evening, your entire stream of false thoughts arises and ceases, arising and ceasing, continuously without end, just like the waves of the ocean, rising and falling one after another. Our mind of false thoughts, as everyone knows, from morning until now, how many discursive thoughts have arisen? They continuously arise, never stopping. Knowing and seeing always wish. Whether your knowing and seeing or your view of self, each thought of yours. Actually, your knowing and seeing wishes to remain in this world. Perhaps every ordinary being is the same. We want our own views to remain in this world. For example, I feel that my view of self should also be thought of as permanently existing. My viewpoints, my thoughts, my life, my values, all kinds of our own views and thoughts wish to remain in this world. Yet karmic forces constantly transfer you to other lands. But actually, our thoughts are like this, very beautiful. Yet actually, you may not be able to realize them, because the power of your karma is extremely great. Due to the movement of karma, you are constantly propelled through cyclic existence, constantly moving from one land to another. For example, some people think they will live forever in the human world. Every day they take some elixirs of immortality. Every day they take care of their bodies. They always think living in this world is wonderful. But your thoughts thoughts are beautiful. Yet actually you may not be able to achieve this. Some say, I will die at Larangar. The sky burial site there is very comfortable. But you can say this now, yet actually when the time comes, you may not be able to die at Larangar. It may not be like that. Indeed, our thoughts, everyone is the same. Some of us think, I want to study Madhyamaka well. In the beginning, you have this thought. But our karma, the power of karma is extremely strong. Before you are ready, perhaps you have already been blown away by the wind of karma. So in this world, actually, sentient beings, here, sentient beings are compared to the formation aggregate. So here it is explained that our discursive thoughts arising and ceasing, actually, each sentient being has their own fixed views. These views very much wish to remain in the world. But who knows? The power of impermanence is so great. We ourselves have very little freedom. Truly, sometimes if we ourselves want to be good practitioners, when karma manifests, when afflictions manifest, we may be helpless. Some people want to live a little longer, but they cannot. Some people want to stay in a certain place longer. Some want to be wealthy, happy, beautiful, long-lived, and so on, hoping for worldly happiness. But when karma manifests, there is nothing to be done. Some who aspire to transcend the world are a little better. They practice well. Some very much hope to attain the rainbow body at the time of death. I once knew a Buddhist practitioner who said, I will definitely attain the rainbow body. But I heard that when he died, not to mention a rainbow body, his corpse was actually quite large. The thought was like that, but sometimes truly, wishes and reality do not match. Dreams and reality are also different. This is called interwoven delusion. They interweave to form delusion. They interweave to form delusion. Perhaps our views themselves have a certain fixedness. But these views are often influenced by karma from past lives or by various present conditions, which disrupt their plans and thoughts, interweaving and disturbing them. As we say, change comes faster than plans. Your plans are very good. Sometimes we all think, this year I will stay well here. Who knew? In the middle, you get seriously ill and leave. Some leave forever, some leave temporarily. I myself often think, this year I will do such and such. Many plans made at the beginning of the year by year's end cannot be realized, not to mention plans for a lifetime or many years. As human beings, having plans is good. Indeed, even one day has a plan. Oh, tomorrow I have nothing to do. Then tomorrow many things suddenly appear. Tomorrow there is a lot to do. Then nothing happens. In just one short day, one short month, our thoughts and views have a certain gap with the subsequent movement of karma. This is called the turbidity of sentient beings. Actually, sentient beings are really quite pitiful. Each sentient being wants things to be better for themselves, especially now, I think, though people here are still a bit better off. At least now, food and drink. We do not worry about these things. This is still very good. We have tsampa, butter, and so on. Looking at worldly people now, truly, they have to pay off mortgages, car loans, and various other things. Especially some people who owe a lot of money. If they do not repay, banks or other departments pressure them. If they do repay, they have nothing left except their own body. Compared to such people, especially now, I sometimes see some workers laboring around us. They are quite pitiful. If there were no pandemic, they would be working outside all year. Although working hard, after working when they return home, basically they would have no problem eating for the whole winter. They come to the Tibetan region to work, but now many are stuck there. When they are stuck there, they cannot even pay the rent. If they cannot pay rent, for example, they have to do nucleic acid tests and quarantine here. During quarantine, you cannot just sit outdoors. Wherever you are, you must pay for lodging. And many places, the hotels are relatively nice because there are many factors involved in this. Why is it that normally for hotels, some are a bit cheaper, some are a bit more expensive? That could also be fine. But many hotels generally tend to be more expensive. So in this way, some of these workers are quite pitiful. So sometimes sentient beings, due to different conditions, some practitioners are still a bit better off. At least regarding their own livelihood and survival, they do not worry much. This is also, in today's context, a very joyful thing. Sometimes when we look at this world, actually, we ourselves could become like this. It is quite possible. Because of the karma we have created and our own merit in various aspects. These people, some are very educated, very talented, but perhaps when they were young, things were quite good. Eventually, gradually, they declined to a certain state. Many of us also think when you are young, when you are middle-aged, your life is quite good. But finally, you may very well become something else. Just as in the words of my perfect teacher, when discussing impermanence, many scenarios of impermanence are described regarding the first and second halves of life. Sentient beings have various different karmic conditions that arise. This is called the turbidity of sentient beings. Especially since the pandemic began, we have deeply felt how pitiful sentient beings are. Now, the fifth. Your seeing and hearing are originally of one nature. The various sense objects create separation, and different forms arise without reason. In essence, they know each other. In function, they oppose each other. The standards of sameness and difference are lost. They interweave to form delusion. This is the fifth layer, called the turbidity of lifespan. This explains the turbidity of lifespan. The turbidity of lifespan corresponds to the consciousness aggregate among the five aggregates. The Buddha told Ananda, your seeing and hearing, feeling and knowing, actually, originally, have no different nature. They are one. The 8 consciousnesses, here we mainly discuss the 8 consciousnesses. Actually, seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing originally within the primordially luminous awareness of Tathagata Garbha have no such and such different essences. But because of the various sense objects, in the beginning, as mentioned before, there was this kind of grasping. After grasping arose, we perceive external sense objects. After perceiving external sense objects, because of the external sense objects, for example, form becomes the object of seeing, sound becomes the object of hearing, and so on. In this way, they become separated. After separation, different forms arise without reason. Without any cause, they become different bodily forms. Originally, within the essence of Tathagata Garbha, these various myriad different appearances do not exist. But because ignorance and afflictions appear, the 6 sense objects appear, and after that, these different appearances manifest. Various conditions arise. At such times, in essence, they know each other. In function, they oppose each other. Within their essential nature, they can mutually know each other. If the essential nature is Tathagata Garbha, within its essence there is no differentiation. They can mutually interpenetrate. But in our conventional world, in terms of their wondrous function, they oppose each other. What you see is not what you hear. What you hear is not smell, nor is it taste, nor is it tactile sensation, and so on. It is not like that. In this way, actually, the standard of sameness and difference has been completely lost. Because the discursive thoughts of sentient beings have intervened, actually, what is the same is no longer the same. What is different is no longer different. That is to say, the concepts of sameness and difference have actually been completely lost. Actually, when we dream, as everyone knows, generally speaking, at that time all 6 consciousnesses have already shut down. Only the deluded mental consciousness has a period of activity. But within this deluded mental consciousness, actually, there are various kinds of seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing at that time. Look at what happens in a dream. In the dream, your eyes are already closed. There is nothing. But within the deluded consciousness, at that time, one can indeed see. One can indeed hear. One can indeed feel touch. All kinds of appearances exist. So for us sentient beings, actually, within the essence, there is no such confusion. But once this confusion arises, the entire standard of sameness and difference has already been lost. Sometimes we look at, for example, traditional Chinese medicine practitioners of the past. Through taking the pulse or examining the tongue, they could basically know the overall condition and illnesses of the entire body. They should be able to know. Some especially skilled Chinese medicine practitioners can completely make adjustments. But if we follow Western medicine, perhaps internal medicine, surgery, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, everything is the eye doctor does not understand the nose doctor does not understand oral medicine. Each doctor cannot accommodate the others. Sometimes Western medicine is truly too fragmented. A doctor spends their whole life looking at, for example, looking at tongues. One doctor looks at tongues every day. Perhaps they have looked at countless tongues. But apart from that, if you ask them to look at eyes, they know nothing at all. So after our 5 aggregates become obstructed, or after our 6 sense faculties become obstructed, everything becomes. Originally they could interpenetrate within, but in between there is fundamentally no way for them to mutually accommodate each other. So they interweave to form delusion. This is the 5th layer. This is called the turbidity of lifespan. If we discuss the turbidity of lifespan in other contexts, it means sentient beings' lifespans are very short. But here, because sentient beings seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing at that time, due to the confusion of ignorance, various different appearances arose. But these different appearances actually do not accord with reality. This is the main meaning of the turbidity of lifespan explained here. Next, a summary. The following passage is a very important section in the Shurangama Sutra. Many great masters consider this to be a very important teaching in the Shurangama Sutra. The Buddha told Ananda, if you now wish your seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing to accord with the Tathagata's permanence, bliss, self, and purity, you should first discern the root of birth and death and rely on the unborn and unceasing, perfectly clear nature to accomplish this. Here he says, the Buddha again told Ananda, since the 5 turbidities above have all been explained, now your present seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing, actually your present seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing should accord with the Tathagata's permanence, bliss, self, and purity. The meaning is that our present, immediate, various discursive thoughts, the various discursive thoughts brought about by the 6 consciousnesses, should merge with the Tathagata's wondrous function of wisdom, characterized by permanence, bliss, self, and purity. The meaning is that the various discursive thoughts of this present moment, if you recognize them, are inseparable from the Tathagata's awareness, the Tathagata's wisdom. You should recognize it in this way. When we teach Dzogchen, we often say, your discursive thoughts of this present moment, whether what you hear, what you see, any phenomenon you can taste. I think after we studied the treasury of the Dharmadhatu the year before last, many people, regarding the present moment's various arising minds of seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing, when trying to recognize them, had some experience. It seems everyone indeed understood. The essence of mind is just like this. Everyone will understand. Finally, when the Buddha directly pointed out to Ananda, your present seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing should be merged into the Tathagata's permanence, bliss, self, and purity, into such a state of wisdom. How should this be done? You should first discern the root of birth and death and rely on the unborn and unceasing, perfectly clear nature to accomplish this. This is very important. If you want to accord with the Tathagata, as explained yesterday, cause and fruition must accord. If cause and fruition are to accord, then now you should first discern the root of birth and death. Discern means to distinguish. That is to say, you should first clearly distinguish the root of samsara, our presently impure consciousness, this consciousness that has arising and ceasing. If you truly want to understand this, in Dzogchen, do we not speak of something called distinguishing samsara and nirvana? When distinguishing samsara and nirvana, the various languages of the 6 realms of sentient beings that I am now recognizing, the discursive thoughts, the postures of the body, actually with the essence of the Tathagata, the wondrous function of body, speech and mind, they are inseparable. Finally, one must recognize this state. This is quite similar. It says, what should you now discern? The root of birth and death, samsara. Then, relying on the unborn and unceasing, the perfect, clear, essential nature, merge them into one. The meaning is, here, discern can mean to eliminate or to clearly recognize or to determine. That is, the essence of samsara merges with the Tathagata's unborn and unceasing totality. Actually, through practice, this should be possible, because using a mind of arising and ceasing to find the mind of no arising and no ceasing is difficult. But the true essence of our mind is without arising and without ceasing. If we recognize it and then abide in that state, this is the mind without arising and ceasing, seeking the awakening without arising and ceasing. This is very important. Using the clear to reverse the illusory arising and ceasing, returning to original awareness, attaining the original luminous awareness of no arising and no ceasing as the causal ground mind, then perfectly accomplishing the fruition ground practice and realization. What does this mean? Using the clear still mind, reverse here means to turn back, to transform. The meaning is using our present clear awareness as just mentioned. What do we transform? The illusory arising and ceasing mind, the illusory arising and ceasing deluded mind, the illusory arising and ceasing deluded appearances, then returning to original awareness, using the present arising and ceasing mind to recognize awareness. Actually, it returns to the original awareness, then attaining the original luminous awareness, which is without arising and ceasing. This is called the causal ground mind. What does this mean? When we often sit in meditation, during seated meditation, if you truly abide in the nature of mind, actually it is the mind without arising and ceasing. Those who have even a little experience will understand this, because the true essence of mind has no arising and ceasing. Although when we first enter, it seems we come through arising and ceasing. But coming through arising and ceasing to recognize the mind without arising and ceasing. At the causal ground stage, this is entirely possible. This is called the causal ground mind. During the process of seated meditation, one should know this oneself. Then, if you often practice in such a state of no arising and no ceasing, finally it will naturally manifest. When it naturally manifests, when you attain Buddhahood, actually it is just this that manifests. Apart from this, there is nothing else. So at the beginning, it may be a bit difficult, but when we abide on the surface, it seems there is arising and ceasing, but actually what we enter into, the essence of the meditative mind, is no different from space. If we continuously practice this, the original face of the mind without arising and ceasing, no different from space, then finally when it manifests, it is also this essence. This is called attaining Buddhahood. This is very crucial. When many of us practice, perhaps some do not understand. Why should we practice like this? Actually, this practice is truly important. If we do not practice like this, perhaps just reciting sutras, circumambulating, or doing good deeds, generating bodhicitta, yes, there is merit. But these are all merits of conditioned phenomena. They are things with arising and ceasing. Then, for such a cause with arising and ceasing to become a fruition without arising and ceasing, there is a certain difficulty. So the following analogy is also very good. Here it says, like clarifying turbid water stored in a still vessel, still and deep, unmoving, the sand and mud settle of themselves, the clear water appears. This is called the initial suppression of adventitious afflictions. Here there are several stages. An analogy is given. For example, this turbid water, originally it was clear, but has been defiled by mud. If placed in an especially still, stationary vessel, some bottle or container, originally the water is turbid, then you pour it into a bottle. After that, still and deep, unmoving, remaining still for a long time, never moving, just leaving it there without any disturbance. At this time, the sand and dust inside gradually, slowly settle down on their own. Then the clear water naturally appears. We call this the initial suppression of adventitious afflictions. This corresponds to our shamatha practice. During each person's process of practice, first the mind should become serviceable. So the Chan school in Han region also emphasizes this greatly. In Tibetan region as well, the great masters also emphasize this. First, you must definitely make this mind, forcefully make it settle down. Actually, each of us, if we abide for a slightly longer time, no matter what kind, no discursive thoughts arising at all, of course, in the main practice of Dzogchen, whether discursive thoughts or non-discursive thoughts, you recognize them all. This is the aspect of vipassana. Let us not discuss vipassana for now. First, shamatha. When practicing shamatha, your mind settles down. Then, just like the 9 stages of mental abiding, following the method of observation there, if discursive thoughts arise, bring the mind back again, abide again and again. Finally, in this way, as some people often say, oh, now I can abide for half an hour, oh, now 1 hour, now 2 hours. At that time, it seems some feel very accomplished, telling everyone everywhere, actually there is no need to say it, just abide. It is not a big deal. 1 or 2 hours is nothing special, but this is very important, just like water naturally becoming clear. Because it is mixed with turbid afflictions, if you make the mind abide like this, this is called our initial suppression of afflictions. Initial suppression of afflictions, not uprooting afflictions. But it is very important. It separates from the afflictions. So why did I say the other day that our practice class here must now increase efforts in actual practice? Otherwise, you call it a practice class, but after a while, if afflictions become heavier and heavier, then not to mention suppressing afflictions, you have already activated afflictions. If people in the practice class have heavy afflictions, then we really have no way to explain ourselves. So if you practice longer each day, then later even physical movement will not be needed. Sometimes there is a difference between a practitioner and a non-practitioner, even when sitting next to each other. When we held the World Youth Buddhist Symposium before, on my side were Theravada Buddhists. They often liked to sit in meditation, not moving at all. Whatever was being said above, they stayed like this the whole time. Then on my right was a monk who did not practice much. He moved constantly. I neither moved particularly nor was very still. I was in the middle, serving as a mediator. This side especially still, that side especially restless. But as for me, I thought perhaps I was in the middle, neither moving nor still, which is a bit better than that one. Better than the best is not possible. Better than the worst is plenty. So we indeed, to be honest, are somewhat lacking in practicing meditation. If we practice like this over the long term, then meditative experiences will certainly arise. See, if water is left alone, it naturally becomes clear. Our mind is the same. If we sit in cross-legged meditation and abide like this, indeed practice will easily succeed. This is the initial practice of shamatha. Removing the mud, pure water, this is called permanently severing fundamental ignorance. This should refer to recognizing the nature of afflictions. After removing the sand and mud just mentioned, finally the pure water has appeared. What is this called? Permanently severing ignorance. This should be the wisdom of vipassana. At that time, the luminous appearance is pure and refined. All transformations are not turned by afflictions. All accord with the pure and wondrous qualities of nirvana. Finally, when we have practiced vipassana wisdom well, our luminous awareness, the nature of Tathagata Garbha, this most refined and luminous state, completely manifests, appearing especially pure. At that time, all transformations will not be turned by afflictions, whether sitting, walking, standing, sitting, or lying down, whether it appears to be singing or dancing, any activity, any action will not be turned by afflictions. At that time, the qualities of pure nirvana's wondrous virtue all accord and manifest. At that time, one has truly accomplished. One has truly attained the supreme fruition. So, including Changshui Zixuan, he explains here, True awareness is like water. Seeing and hearing are like turbidity. The body in meditation is like a still vessel. The meaning is, true awareness is like water. Seeing and hearing are like the turbidity just mentioned. Our body in meditation is like a still vessel. So through this kind of practice, first suppress afflictions, manifest shamatha, then further recognize the nature of afflictions. This is the practice of vipassana. Finally, uproot ignorance and manifest the qualities of the Tathagata. Regarding this, everyone should also try their best to practice diligently. This is very important. All right, today we will stop here with the Shurangama Sutra.
Sonandai Tanche Rogaya Tonani Jana Bashi Jirgana Jirano Chukai Chupun Sonen Droa Droa
Bandangara Badma Sodargye Bandangara Badma Sodargye Bandangara Badma Sodargye